Hello and welcome to Uncensored Conservatism. This is episode number 288, and I've been working on this for a while, so it's a little bit of a conservative manifesto, and I'm probably going to sneeze at some point or get bit on my knee by a cat. And there's the sneeze. Okay. Anyway, this is part one of a six-part series on a conservative manifesto of sorts, and I am a proud conservative, and I am a registered Republican and have been all my life. No one should necessarily conflate the two, conservative and Republican, because they're not always one and the same. That being said, I can never subscribe to being a Democrat, and I'm certainly not a liberal, nor am I a libertarian in the strictest sense, but there is some overlap with some libertarianism, but certainly not the crackpot type. So let's take a look at some social issues today, starting with abortion. If you've seen any of my previous episodes, you know that I am unapologetically pro-life or pro-innocent life, and a baby in the womb certainly meets that criteria. Now, one of the biggest complaints of the pro-life movement was Roe versus Wade. Since there was a pro-life movement, overturning Roe versus Wade was a priority. We achieved that victory when the Supreme Court ruled in the Dobbs decision, which essentially returned the issue to the states. But the pro-life movement seemed to stall and rest on this victory because since the Dobbs decision, states have liberalized their abortion laws or enshrined so-called reproductive rights into their state constitutions, making it more difficult to pass abortion regulations in those states. Now, I've always been against the Roe decision. I believed it to be bad constitutional jurisprudence. It was a great dissertation on the history of abortion, but little in the way of actual legal doctrine. Now, this guy, a Democrat, ironically, had perhaps the best mantra when it came to abortion: safe, legal, and rare. Now, let's take the legal part first. Most conservatives believe in the three big exceptions: rape, incest, or threat to maternal life. First off, abortions because of rape and incest account for about 1% of all abortions in this country at best. And when we talk about the life of the mother, we are talking about her physical life. The fact is that the vast majority of abortions in this country are performed for the convenience of the mother. It would interfere with a career or school, they weren't ready to be a mother, etc. Plain and simple. No conservatives are against conservatives are against the vast majority of abortions in this country. Those performed simply for maternal convenience. That would certainly affect the rarity aspect of that Clintonian mantra. There would be legal abortions under the three exceptions, which would make the vast majority rare if they were outright banned. But we know that in a few select states, there are not total bans on abortions with or without exceptions. Instead, there are fetal heartbeat measures or cutoffs after so many weeks of gestation. The 20-week mark seems to be the most popular, and it seems like a short time, but 20 weeks is 5 months of pregnancy. If you do not know or cannot make a decision by 5 months of pregnancy, then maybe you should be sterilized for stupidity or ignorance, or just put on a pink pussy hat and prance in the streets. So let's just use 20 weeks as a guide. This is what that human life looks like at 20 weeks. It has brain waves, the bones are hardening, it has a heartbeat, you can determine their sex. It sucks its thumb. That, my friends, is a human life. Which brings me to the safety part of the mantra. So, the pro-death people will tell you that state regulations of abortion clinics are simply roadblocks. They'll tell you that abortions, surgical and medical, are some of the safest procedures out there until they suddenly aren't and something goes wrong. Then they'll say it was because of the state law. So let's get some facts straight about this particular case. Amber Thurman did not die because of Georgia's abortion law. She died because the abortion drug she obtained in North Carolina did not work as intended. She died of sepsis, not because of a law. Regardless, in some liberal states, there are more regulations in a dental office than there are for an abortion clinic. And there's more informed consent to have a mole removed from your arm than a human baby from your womb. And the reasons are pretty simple. Planned Parenthood is the largest provider of abortions in this country. They are a billion-dollar entity with a large part of that money coming from the federal government. Now, I, as a conservative, fully support cutting any government funding for Planned Parenthood and redirecting those funds to community health centers that do not perform abortions. Planned Parenthood can continue to perform abortions on their own and rely on user fees or donations, but government money, absolutely not. Another part of the rarity part of the Clintonian mantra is contraception. As a conservative, I have no problem with contraceptive services being funded. Simply, a life prevented is one less life aborted. Now, there's two considerations here. First, is it a contraceptive or is it an abortifacient? The morning after pill and Ella and the like are not contraceptives. Condoms, the pill, IUDs, they are contraceptives. The second question is age and access to contraceptives. Most states currently allow minors access, but there may be certain restrictions in certain states. As a conservative, I'd much prefer a sexually active teen to be on birth control than for that sexually active teen to become pregnant and consider abortion as an option. We got to be realistic. Obviously, abstinence is the best form of birth control, but we must also realize it is not always practiced. Obviously, contraception costs money and is usually paid for through insurance. The question becomes, why should I pay for someone else's contraception? I think a better question would be, why should I pay for someone else's abortion or unwanted child, because that's going to cost you more over the long run. Regardless, I do believe that health insurance plans could be more tailored to the consumer. If a couple or a woman is of childbearing age and they want contraceptives covered, then have that show in their individual premium. This would totally eliminate the contraception coverage mandate in Obamacare that causes moral and religious problems. Now, as I stated earlier, there will never be zero abortions in this country. That's just a pipe dream. This brings me to embryonic stem cell research. So it seems dark and morose, but why not put that abortion to use if there is to be even a 97% decrease in the number of abortions? The reason may be that from everything I've read, there's been very few medical breakthroughs using embryonic stem cells. In fact, greater success has been using adult discarded surgical tissue and AI methods. So I believe embryonic stem cell research is a thing of the past anyway. Next are frozen embryos, human life, and should they be protected as such? It's a tough question to answer because you'll get a conservative answer that life begins at conception when the egg is fertilized. Now, I do believe this in the practical sense, but not the scientific sense, so let me explain. When an egg is fertilized, there is shared DNA between the mother and father. Left to grow, it'll form a unique human being, but it's got to go through some stages. Although it is clearly a human being, at fertilization, it is not unique. The uniqueness occurs during the gastrulation stage of development, which is about 20 days after fertilization. It is at this point there will not be two of the same, and the unique dermal layers form. Now, most women don't know they're pregnant until perhaps 30 to 40 days after fertilization, when they miss their period. So the practical effect is that unless you take a pregnancy test within so many days of having unprotected sexual intercourse, you know you are pregnant after you have a unique human life in you that therefore deserves legal protection. As for frozen embryos having legal protections under my rubric, it would depend on what stage of development was that embryo when it was frozen. Now, the smart, logically thinking pro-death, and I refuse to use the phrases pro-choice or reproductive health or reproductive rights, would say that if I have this definition, gastrulation, then why the beef with the morning after pill and such? The difference is the definition and the intent. A contraceptive prevents fertilization. It doesn't kill the results of fertilization. And as for intent, if you meet two criteria, you are sexually active and you wish not to get pregnant, there is a plethora of contraceptive options available. Using them infers an intent not to become pregnant in the first place. Finally, on this issue of abortion, before I move on to gay rights, is that the reversal of Roe versus Wade returned the issue of abortion rightfully to the states. As such, the federal government should stay the hell out of it. This is why the government should not fund in any way the number one provider of abortions, Planned Parenthood, through grants or Medicaid reimbursements or whatever else they come up with. And this asshole, soon after the Dobbs decision, introduced federal legislation banning abortion after so many weeks. He confirmed in the minds and hearts of the liberals what they believed the pro-life movement was all about. In fact, he gave the enemy ammunition. Just stay the fuck out of it and let the states handle the issue. Yes, there will be a balkanization of abortion laws, but that's for the states to decide. Now, as for gay rights, let's start with gay marriage. From an anthropological standpoint, marriage between two people solidifies the basic unit of society, the family. As part of that family, there are offspring, known as children. Now, to the best of my knowledge, males cannot get pregnant and have children, nor can one get pregnant through lesbian sex. But the Supreme Court in the Obergefell decision ignored all this and waxed poetic about love. That being said, homosexuals have been shielded from workplace and housing discrimination under existing federal law and Supreme Court decisions. Now, I don't particularly care where any male sticks his dick with anyone, but that doesn't mean I have to condone it or codify a societal approval of the practice. I don't have to accept homosexuality as something normal, as the media attempts to do. And I certainly don't want it shoved in my face with gay pride bullshit and dudes prancing in the streets and ass chaps, or lesbians, usually with pink hair and some kind of nose piercing, screeching at me. In fact, I'd be kind of happier if they just went back into the closet, because, you know, what the societal acceptance of homosexual has brought us, transgender freaks. First off, these male-to-female transgenders are a caricature of real women, what they think a woman is, or how she should look and how she should act. And come on, let's face it. These ugly men create an even uglier woman. So the big debate is about these freaks competing in sports. It's not about hatred or transphobia, because no conservative is afraid of a transgender person. It's about fairness to real women and girls, plain and simple. And did you ever notice that the female-to-male transgenders aren't out there competing as males? Could it be that they know they'd be at a considerable physical disadvantage? Why is it only males who identify as female cause all the problem in sports? Nope, folks, there are two sexes, and let's drop the shit about gender, okay? Let's not change the language and trot out a lot of wordy bullshit to justify the concept of gender. Male and female, end of story, full stop, period, exclamation point. As for minors who think they are what they are not, that's a social contagion, plain and simple. Leave the kids alone. Most kids who identify as transgender during adolescence grow out of it. That's been proven in numerous studies worldwide. If we don't condone the delusions of an adult schizophrenic, why should we condone the transient delusions of a minor? But if they insist, then wait until they can purchase a fucking beer before they fuck up their bodies with hormones or surgeries. And any parent who condones this shit is guilty of child abuse, in my opinion. Normalizing the abnormal is what this has become. I find it most strange. We live in a society that frowns on the human trafficking of minors, that decries childhood prostitution, can't use a picture here, that outlaws child pornography, and bans corporal punishment in schools, yet normalizes aberrant sexual exposure like drag queen story hours and gay pride parades with kids waving their little rainbow flags. And in some quarters encourages hormonal or surgical mutilation in minors, although Dylan Mulvaney wasn't a minor when this happened. Anyway, finally, turning to feminism in this episode, now that I'm done with the LGBTQs and pluses, whatever the fuck they are, 3 points. The feminist movement has made great strides since the early 1970s, and yay for them. They don't have to burn their bras in public anymore. But they went astray in 2 areas. First, they attached themselves to the LGBTQ plus people. Second, they overplayed their hand with the Me Too movement. Harvey Weinstein? Yep, very horny pervert, absolutely. Besides, look at this guy. What self-respecting woman would voluntarily have sex with that man? I mean, I can just bet he sweated like a pig and smelled on that casting couch. But others caught up in the movement, it got so stupid that this guy apologized for his behavior that required no apology because of a bad date. And the final issue is the alleged wage gap between men and women. Yes, a wage gap exists, but not because employers have a lower view of women workers. Wages and pay are determined by a number of factors: work experience, chosen career, work history, work habits, etc. All things being equal, a male with 2 years experience makes the same as a female with 2 years experience in the same job. In other words, you got to control for the gender gap. The reason for the gap is that women often choose careers that are not as high paying as those for men. For example, a female nurse with 10 years experience will likely make less in a year than a male doctor with 2 years experience. But that same female nurse will make more than the male janitor with 20 years experience. Now, maybe there should be more female doctors, and I would definitely go to her, or engineers or construction workers or what have you, but that's a whole different argument. I mean, I can make an argument that there should be more male nurses or male teachers. So whether it is 79 cents on the dollar or 92 cents or whatever the hell you come up with, ask what job categories we're talking about. Ask about experience and work performance. Ask for more details before you cite a stupid number. So anyway, join me next time, which I think will be tomorrow, when we'll look at some governmental issues, fiscal issues, and election concerns. And that's it for today. Thanks. Have a great day and a more pleasant tomorrow.